Okay, right? Big time.
Hello? Is it on? Can you hear me? Good. Thank you. Alrighty, well, good morning, and thank you for coming to our second diversity dialogue of the year. This diversity dialogue is titled For a Better Future. My name is Heather Essex Guy. I'm the Racial Justice Coordinator for the YWCA at the Northeast Indiana. Never mind that whole paragraph. I think a good way to represent myself is to let you know that I firmly believe that it is a blessing to be someone else's blessing. And so I am super excited to share today's guest. I think all three of our guests are blessings to our community, and we are truly blessed to be able to be in the company of such magnanimous people. So super excited to be here today. As we are engaging the diversity dialogue, we do have some rules for conduct. So please remember, we like to facilitate open and honest discussions. We abide by these rules at each of our sessions. We ask that you humble yourself in the name of learning, open mind, open hearts, be open to new ideas, give everyone a chance to speak. We like to have one microphone and pass that microphone. One person talks, everyone listens. We also believe in attacking the problem and not the person in our diversity sessions. And we ask that you respect the confidentiality of the personal views and stories shared during this experience. The YWCA also would like to invite the community to join the Level Up Council. The Level Up Council is an opportunity for community members to meet with like-minded and caring people to discuss ways in which we can make impacts in the community. We believe that our community can only truly prosper when each member is accepted, supported, and valued. YWCA Northeast Indiana is taking deliberate action to educate, empower, and unite people through programs designed to create inclusion and build racial equity. Our vision is to help our region become the equitable place we know it can be. The YWCA likes to say it's time to level up Northeast Indiana, and again, you're invited to that conversation. I just want to share a story real quick, maybe two stories. I am a child of Fort Wayne community. I grew up at the Boys and Girls Club. And so what that opportunity did was show me a different side of the community that I may not have been able to have access to without an institution like the Boys and Girls Club. Super grateful for that opportunity. One of the things that came from that was that I was able to be exposed to a person named Condra Ridley. I remember distinctly her coming to where we were at the Boys and Girls Club and sharing stories with us. And I remember being a kid amongst the kids and thinking like, how awesome is it that she has commanded our attention, we're interested in her and she's interested in us. And we were on our best behavior. So I thought that that's the power of storytelling, right? It's a community-centric kind of activity. And for me, when I think of storytelling, I think of someone like Condra Ridley, who brings people together in this capacity. So it's truly a blessing to be able to share her with the community. We were here last week. We walked in. She was already on a video somewhere. We were like, oh, there she goes. And so I look at this as just a personal pleasure and a personal opportunity to put her on a platform in front of our community and say, look, Fort Wayne, we have such an awesome person. So super excited for that. Our other guests, we have Eric Baker from Aaron's house. Eric and I know each other, we're family friends, but it was one instance we were at a community thing together and I saw him engaging youth, and it was one of the most gentle, caring, engaging ways of just demonstrating that kind of interaction with youth. And so I put a seed in my head, I want to platform him. And then lastly, for Angelo and Alive Community Outreach, I had a neighbor in the fall prior to the referendum who put up a big sign and it said, vote no to the referendum. And it said all of these negative things like they're going to put bad people in the schools and they're not qualified. And so I thought, if this referendum passes, I am going to platform that program just out of like, just out of, I don't know what, call it what you want, but I was like, ooh, if this passes, I'm gonna put that in someone's face. And so that is how today came together. And it's like a slow moving it's a slow moving thing, right? It's from my childhood. It's just from taking bits and pieces of things that are happening in our community and saying, you know what, let's let Fort Wayne recognize that we have some awesome, awesome people here. Not only are they awesome individuals, but what they do is invest in our children. And I think that that is the most important. And so as I introduce Condra and bring up Condra, I want to share this quote from Frederick Douglass. As we listen to their approaches to engaging our youth in our community, I want us to keep this quote in mind. The quote from Frederick Douglass is, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And so as we think about today's topic, for a brighter future, I want us to think about what that means to be pouring into kids more than just public education. And super excited for everyone to share their stories today. So if you all don't mind, I would love for us to welcome Chief Condra Ridley to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Heather, for your really beautiful intro. I am a product of Fort Wayne as well. Though I wasn't born here, my mother had the vision that Fort Wayne was a beautiful place to raise children, better than Chicago, which was her option back in 1955. So we came to Fort Wayne, and I've been here most of my life. And early on, I didn't really like Fort Wayne very much, but after living in Los Angeles and seeing city life other places, and then coming here and being a mother and going through all those things, I have come to really appreciate Fort Wayne very much, love it dearly, and I will surely love Fort Wayne forever. It has helped me in my life journey and given me so many opportunities to meet beautiful, wonderful people. And I think the most important thing that it has done is to give me the view that I can make a difference in the world. I can make a change in things. I can improve things. And Fort Wayne always gives me that hope. So today, Heather has given me the opportunity to come and do what I have loved doing ever since the early 80s when I joined the staff of the Allen County Public Library. And I worked at Pontiac Branch, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that after this story. So I'm going to do what I'm accustomed to doing, and I'm going to tell you a short story. There was once a man who had traveled all around the world. He loved his travels, was excited to be able to see new and exciting places, and one day he stumbled upon a city that was unlike anything he had ever seen. As he spent the whole day going from one end of the city to the other, he was just fascinated by what he saw. It was a beautiful place. It seemed that there were mansions all over. He saw children running around everywhere, playing, happy. The people had a special kind of glow on their faces, a glow of happiness, contentment. And it seemed everywhere he went, the streets were clean. He did not see not a single beggar anywhere. He couldn't quite understand it. And as the sun began to set, he saw an elderly gentleman just resting by a tree. And he went to the elder and he said, "Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I just can't seem to figure out how this kind of place exists. I have traveled all around the world, but I've never seen a place quite like this." And the elderly man said, "Well, my son, what is it that troubles you?" And the traveler said, "Well, everywhere I see, the people are happy, they're healthy, they have a glow of joy. I've never seen a place where everyone looks so prosperous and healthy and happy like this. There's no dirt, there are no beggars. Every city that I've been to, everywhere that I've been, there has always been a rich group, a middle class group, and of course, at the very bottom, the impoverished. But I don't seem to see any of that here. How have you been able to accomplish it?" Well, the elder looked the traveler in the eye and he said, "Well, we have a special way of doing things in this city. This is the city of Pali. And in our city, when anyone comes into this place and would like to become a resident, we bring them before a council of elders and a council of mothers. And we interview them. We ask them lots of questions, and then we share with them our focus. And our most important value is our children. We all like to pour the best that we have into our children. We believe that if we make our city best for the children, then everything else will be taken care of. And so we make sure that the well-being of our children is our primary focus. We take care of them first, and everything else seems to fall in place. So you see, we collectively work so that we can nurture our children in love and excellence. And once we have questioned and shared our views, we then let the spiritual priests and priestesses observe that person who wants to become a resident. They watch them and listen to them, and then after that, we give things a rest, and then we come back together. And we try to determine if this person is someone that we think can add some value to our city, and if they bring something of value to it. Now, once we determine that that person can be a part of our lovely city of Pali, then we have a grand celebration. We celebrate them, and each person who comes to the celebration brings $1 and a brick, and we gift it to that person who becomes our resident. And so the traveler said, "Well, how many people do you have in this city of Pali?" And he said, about 100,000 plus right now. So you see, if someone becomes a resident here, immediately they receive $100,000 and 100,000 bricks. And we help them to build a mansion. And that is why you see such prosperity in this city of Pali. Well, the traveler was very amazed by all of that. And then the elder says, "Now, when you become a resident here, you will receive your $100,000 and all of your bricks, and we will help you build a fine home. And surely you will enjoy being a part of the beautiful city of Pali. Welcome to Pali." What a world. I dream a world. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang its head and joy like a pearl attend the needs of all mankind. Of such a world I dream. Of such I dream my world. Of such let's dream our world. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones to make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day. Just you and me. And that's the story. The city of Pali, I hope that story is one that helps to tap into your imagination and imagine that we still can have a place where everyone is prosperous, where people are joyful, and a place where we take care of our children first. One of the oldest proverbs that I love is one that I learned when I was at Pepperdine University in Los Angeles way back in 1973. And my teacher of African literature introduced us to the proverb, "Children are the reward of life." And that has become one of my very favorite ones. We all know that children are our gifts. They are the one thing that we can invest in that gives us just insurmountable dividends. We don't know. When we pour into a child, we don't know what that may produce. But I tell you, over these past 43 years that I have been back in Fort Wayne, I have had such tremendous experiences working with young people. And it all started at Allen County Public Library. When I moved back here in 1981, after having been in Los Angeles for 8 years, and that was the only time that I got away from good old Fort Wayne, but those years really did help me a lot, and they gave me enough that I could bring it back to my community and share it with the children. So when I started working in 1981 at Pontiac Branch Library, the thing that attracted me to it most was that it gave me an opportunity to work with children. And that's the one thing that Miss Charlene Holly, who was the human resources manager at the time, she had said, well, this will give you a chance. You can work with children. There'll be a lot of children who frequent this library. And truly, it was those children at Pontiac Branch Library who gave us the clay that we needed in order to build something that could sustain. We didn't know when I started that first day in June, I think it was June 15th, 1981, I had no idea what kind of journey I was going on, but it turned out to be a really valuable one. Children frequented Pontiac Branch Library. We hardly ever saw parents coming with their children, but the children utilized the branch. Oftentimes we'd have people come into the branch and they'd say, what kind of library is this? It's so noisy and all these children running around. But those children were what we had to work with at that time. The gentleman who was working as the manager of Pontiac Branch, his name is Randall Gillen, and Randall and I became like the fastest friends ever. We were born just 4 days apart, and we just really developed a friendship that has lasted all the way even to now. We still are in touch. But Randall, we used to sit there and we would try to figure out what are we going to do to make this place valuable in this community. In 1980, Pontiac Branch Library, which was then located at 3304 Warsaw, was in the place that had the highest rate of illiteracy according to the 1980 census. It had the highest rate of illiteracy in the county. And that library always had the lowest circulation rates. That meant the number of books going out. A lot of our books would go out. And I used to say, oh, we don't have any irate patrons. And they said, well, people don't bring your books back. So I was like, you know, we did have a lot of books that would go out. A lot of them wouldn't come back sometimes. But we did have those children. And those children would come. And Randall used to say, Condra, if we can make this library enjoyable for children, people will come. And, you know, and the children will develop a habit of utilizing the library, and it'll last. Well, we prayed around there a lot, and we worked, and we tried to appeal to children. The children did come, and more came, and more came, and more came. And it ended up that over the years, after our doing so many different things, we did so many amazing things. We had book marches where we actually imitated one of the freedom marches, and we marched for books, encouraging people to read and read books to children and read to one another. And even we had things where we would have books on the beach. We recreated a beach in our parking lot and had children just bring blankets, and we pretended we were out at the beach. One of our neighbors even brought us a sprinkler so we could have a little water. But we had all sorts of, we would have dances with the books, whatever we could do with the books we were doing. And the children did come, and it really did work out. We fed into those children, we nurtured them, we cared for them, we showed them kindness and respect, and the things that we gave to them, they gave back to us in volumes. And so today, you see Pontiac Branch Library has moved over to Creighton and Lafayette Street. When that happened, when the library system decided to move the branch from its residential area, because we were nestled right in the middle of a neighborhood where nobody really could see us. If you weren't coming to Pontiac Branch Library knowing that you were coming there, you wouldn't stop. But it became a place where people got used to coming. There were lots of reading activities, and the children made it happen. So I think of Pontiac Branch Library as the place that the children built. And when we give our children what they need, it's amazing the things that they will give back. And one of the most gratifying things that I had the opportunity to see, I left Pontiac Branch Library in 1997. And it amazes me even to this day that some of the people who work at Pontiac, they say, yeah, some people just were by here maybe a few weeks ago asking for you, and been long gone. But, you know, it's just the fact that we were able to give those children something of value that they were able to utilize in their lives. And so fast forward to about 2009, and I was working here at the main library, and I was working in children's services. And one of the sweetest things I saw was one day in the children's play area, I saw one of the young men who was a little boy way back in the early 80s when I worked at Pontiac, and there he was with his little child. And I said, well, it worked. Just what Randall and I had thought and prayed for, that the children, if we gave them something that was enjoyable, they would continue to utilize the library. So to see that young man as a father with his child was all the reward I needed. And so it's just so we have at our disposal, at our impact level, so many young people that we can give to. So I always say, take some time, spend some time with a child. It can be a child in your family, and it can be just any child. Children need asset builders, people who will pour into them, say positive things to them, and just interact with them. They have so much to share, and we have a lot to share as well. They give to us, we give to them, and we all are so much better for it. So I feel like if we each adopt the idea that we do what we can do to make life better for our children in this community. We've already been voted one of those places that's one of the best places for children. And I like to think Fort Wayne really does have a lot of wonderful things for children. The library especially offers so many things, not just the books, but the programs and the opportunity to interact with so many different people who have so much to share, so much to teach. We all have a lot to teach, and we have a lot to learn. And I think if we let our young people share with us the best that they have, they help to bring out the best in us as well. So take our time. We need to take our time and share some of it with the youth. Love a child today, because a good childhood can last a lifetime.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
So, get my little notes here for a moment. I am really so elated to be on panel with these fine young men. These are some young men who actually have spent time, well, one of them is actually from Fort Wayne Community Schools, and a graduate of Concordia, and one of them has family roots here in Fort Wayne, lived here for a time, but is from Chicago. So we're going to hear some amazing things and see what good products come out of good old Fort Wayne. So I want to begin our time together today by introducing Mr. Eric Baker. Eric Baker is the one who has spent some time in Fort Wayne, but he actually spent most of his childhood in Chicago, so he brings that richness to us. Now, Eric has been a public servant for most of his life. And you can see he's young, but still, most of his life he's been in public service. He served in the Army and actually was in Iraq in 2001 and 2002. So we thank him for his service. He has served as a Fort Wayne firefighter for 18 years. And presently, Eric is the Director of Outreach for Aaron's House for Grieving Children. And that is a place that actually has a special place in my heart, because when I was at Pontiac Branch Library, I had the opportunity to work with some of the people who were starting up an inner city division of work for Aaron's House. And we know that, unfortunately, today, so many of our children deal with a lot of grief and loss, and a place like Aaron's House is something that I think is invaluable for our community. And I think it shows that how very forward we are in dealing with things that are relevant for children by having Aaron's House. So I'm thankful that Eric has such a passion for serving youth, and I'm thankful for his love for his community. I think he's pretty infectious, so I want to now proudly present to you Mr. Eric Baker.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with you some of the really neat things that we have going on at Aaron's House. But before I get started, I just really want to say that, I mean, the history telling and the richness of the stories that you share, I mean, they are just timeless, and I really appreciate every time I'm in your presence, okay? So let me get to why I'm here. My name is Eric Baker. I'm the Community Outreach Director for Aaron's House for Grieving Children. I've served in this role for, let me get going. There we go. All right, there we go. Bam, right? I've served in this role for close to 5 years. I started off as a volunteer. It's just showed me so much about our community. It's allowed me to network and just meet with some very awesome and wonderful people in our community. But I want to give you a little bit about Aaron's House. So as it says right here, okay, this is my story. But just to give you a little bit about Aaron's House, I mean, we started in 1989 with the death of a young lady named Erin Farah. Her parents decided to turn that grief into something powerful. So they went along and they started up a foundation, an organization called Aaron's House in 1993. We started off in a church basement and only had 4 families. And as that grief program just continued to grow and grow within the community, all the way to 2012, we broke ground actually on our new center, which is just fantastic. We have countless rooms and countless areas for children to come in and have a place to actually talk about that grief and share some of the problems and things that's associated with it, and just learn and grow in a community. So it's a really awesome program. But what I want to talk to you today about is my outreach initiative. Like I said, I started about 5 years ago. I came in as a volunteer. They liked the way that I handled working with the children. I can't say that I've always had like that connection with kids, but working in a place and volunteering with children at Aaron's house, it just kind of showed me that, it's deeper things in life. It's more than just the outer shell. There are a lot of people, including our children in our communities, who are suffering, and they need people to step up and actually be a part of the organization and the system and help facilitate them through that process of grief. So that's what led me there. I started off with a blank sheet of paper, and my executive director, Debbie Meyer, she was able to pursue a grant, and that's what kind of got us going. That grant allowed us the opportunity to start looking out more into the community and actually going to some of these places, because we realized that a lot of families, especially during a time of grief, they don't have that opportunity to just break away and say, hey, I'm going to take you way out to Aaron's house. They think, so by actually us having these community programs and meeting children where they are, it's allowed us to do some outreach and connect with them in those places. And also share information and kind of like create an educational place for the community to understand what we do and realize that our programs and services are 100% free. And we're 100% free thanks to all the donors in the community and great businesses who believe in what we do and want us to be out there sharing and helping children in their times of need. So these areas of our city have greater increases in homicides, deaths, and suicides. My boss, she just realized that this was a place where we needed to be at. So I will show you some of our zip codes where we have most of our programs at. And then I'll give you some stats and let you see why we're needed in those areas. So we have, it took us a while to get the program off the ground. It took us close to a year to actually get our first program going, and I think we started right in 2019 with the Ewell Wilson Center. And from there, through just working hard at the Ewell Wilson Center, having great programs for our kids, we learned a lot about what our children are needing from us as far as grief goes. Oftentimes in my programs, I have close to 70% of the children in those programs who acknowledge grief and who have a lot of stories to share. I've heard some of the wildest things that you think you could ever imagine when it comes from a child's mouth. Losing 2 family members right in front of them, telling us about a family member who died of suicide and they witnessed some of it. I mean, these are things that are affecting our children in our community, and it's not allowing them to grow because they have to work through that grief before they can get to that next level. Grief can actually just stop our children from that growth process. That success what they're supposed to they're supposed to garner. It can slow down that process. And we know through our behaviors and actions that some of our children do around us, that some of them are definitely affected by grief, and they need an opportunity to have a place where they can work through it at. So from the Ewell Wilson Center, we connected with the YMCA, Vincent Village, McMillan, and the Jennings Center and Weiser Park. Every year I work with close to 400 children, and we have a fall, spring, and a summer session to go with that. Now I put those names up there: Shirley Woods, Luther Whitfield, Amos Norman, Sharon Tucker, Parks and Recs, and also we have other people as well. But because that's important, because having the ability to connect with these people and having them come on board and align with us when we're trying to set up our programs is necessary. That's the only way that we can kind of grow what we do, to be able to contact and get with and connect with children in the community for the outreach program. So I just wanted to put their names up there and say kudos to those individuals who are willing to come on board and help us and align with our program goals to help as many children as possible work through grief. So how do we get to this point? So like I said, building relationships through networking. That's very important for us. I love to do it. And it's something that I'm kind of a introvert, but I found that through networking and being a part of the community and just getting out there and being willing to invest in the goals and the things that we want to do, it's allowed me to kind of be open and connecting with people. So I love the networking side of things. When I first started, I was very nervous about networking because it's not something that I'm used to, but now I really enjoy it. Another part of our programs that help us along when we're doing them at different organizations is that we have flexible programs, and each program can be different for each center that we work at. That allows us to adjust to what the center's needs are versus what our needs are, and we just kind of work like that. Now, we design our activities and projects so that they can be put together really fast and taken apart just as fast. We only have an hour to do our programs at each one of these centers. But our centers are also a gateway for people, for our children and families to actually be able to go out to Aaron's house and actually go and get that type of service as well. So it's not just us going there and just educating the families and the children in the organizations. It's actually giving them the opportunity to come out to Aaron's house and learn about the programs there and be a part of it. Now, educating and impacting our community is huge because what I've found is that there's a lot of people who really don't understand the effects of grief and what it can do to a child. And like I tell people, you know, how can you fight something when you don't have the tools and the skills to fight it, or you even understand what it is? So educating the community on what grief is a really big part of my job. I try my best to, like Heather said, when she met me out there at, out there at the park, out south? Yeah. She caught me in a place where anytime I'm talking to people, family members, friends, anyone in the community, I'm constantly trying to help them understand the importance of grief. And sharing our knowledge and experience with organizations we work with. We want our organizations to understand what grief is too. We want them to realize that a lot of the things that children are displaying in some of the programs that they have, some of it is just grief-related issues. Now, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, we are facilitators. We facilitate our programs to help children work through grief. But we are backed by a large community of nurses, doctors, scientists, all types of people from all different professions that we go to a place called the NAGC once a year. That's the National Alliance for Grieving Children. And we bring all those people together and we're able to learn some of the newest techniques in how to work with children with grief and how to manage some of those behaviors and things. So it's a wonderful, robust community that we have. Indiana, we're the second largest grief center in the state. And I want to say it's close to 200 grief centers here now, but when we started, it was only 30 grief centers in the country. All right, so here are some of the area codes where we do our work at, the 46805, 46806, and so on. And we found that these zip codes have the highest rates of death and homicide. And we feel that grief is important, that our grief work is important when we're in those communities because of that. We know that traumatic grief is something that's even worse than grief itself. It's not a normal, natural thing. Grief is pretty normal, but when you add in the fact that people are dealing with the trauma, which means the shootings, the stabbings, the even drug overdoses we look at as traumatic grief, it has some very profound effects on children and how they can work through things. So I just want to share some quick symptomology from ages 11 to 13, and you just think about some of these things and some of the children that we encounter on our day-to-day. From ages 11 to 13, we look at risk-taking, acting out, experimental and unsafe substances and behaviors. Many may try to take on the caregiving role. They may isolate themselves from friends and family members, and then they have some emotional things that come into play too, like difficulty managing their emotions and like having those feelings of revenge and sadness and relief and not being able to be relieved by those emotions and having worry. And then survivor's guilt, depression and anxiety. All of these things that I just mentioned our children are dealing with. And like I said, in my programs, I get close to about 70% of kids in those groups who have some type of grief. And a lot of them, I want to say close to 30% are dealing with traumatic grief. Now, when you look at that, it paints a picture of what our children are dealing with. So when we look at some of these behaviors that they deal with, maybe we can look through that different lens now and see like, hey, okay, maybe I'm looking at a child who's affected by something that they need support for versus just calling a child a bad kid or something like that. I hear a lot of people do that. And that's why it's important when we go to our centers, we kind of educate them on some of those concepts. Now, so traumatic grief has the ability to compound loss and impact a child's ability to process grief in a healthy way. And the early intervention from facilitators at Aaron's house and counselors and therapists, that helps children to curb those behaviors in the future. I mean, ultimately, we want children who are successful, who want to be out there and do things in life and have a great life. We're not going to get that if we have children who are stuck in this grief stage. Okay, so some of the demographics I wanted to show and some of the statistics. I mean, when you look at this, you know, each year it seems to go up. In 2015, 25 murders happened in our community. These are right in those communities where I just had those zip codes up at. 43 in 2016, and if you go all the way to 2020, it goes down for a year, but we all know that death and homicide and things like that, they're on a rise. So every kid, well, according to WHO, which is the World Health Organization, when someone dies, at least 3 to 10 people are affected by that death. And what do those effects mean? It means a lot of those symptoms that I mentioned right there that people are dealing with. So these are some of the areas, and as you can see, like, I mean, we have a very robust area. We have, in some of our area codes, 46805, we have a multitude of diversity. We got a lot of different people in these communities. So it's not just one set group of people. It's a lot of kids in my group. I have a diverse group of children in each one of my programs. And they all have their grief stories to share. There's the 46806. 46816. And as you can see, some of these statistics change as I go forward. 46803 and 46802. So a bigger look at this is like when you look at these different sides of our city, I mean, how many times in a city do you actually know, like, where are most of the problems happening at? When we look at these statistics, we can see that it's certain parts of the city where there is a lot of grief, a lot of traumatic grief. And that's why we wanted to put our programs in these areas, because we wanted to make an impact on those children's lives and help them to work through that grief. Okay, so what does a typical program look like for me? A typical program night is I pull up, I get all this equipment out of my truck, and I set up as fast as I can. Within 5 minutes, I work with the center to collect the children. They come into the program rooms. We lay out rules. We let the children know what the program is going to be like. And we give them 2 activities that focus and center around working through grief, remembering their loved ones. We do art projects. We do different things like playful activities. Like we turn anything into grief that we can at Aaron's house. Well, grief work. So we'll do like Grief Connect 4. We'll do Grief Jenga. And it's all just to give children the opportunity to share and speak about the grief that they're feeling, because we feel like most children don't get the opportunity during these times of grief when someone just died to actually work through it and have something to say. Oftentimes, the breadwinner of the family is not there anymore, and that child he or she cannot share what they feel on the inside. So let's see what else. We provide snacks, drinks, and pizza for the participants. Although we have limitations for our off-site programs, we do a good job of loading up my van with as much stuff as I can, so that when I do my programs, kids have a lot of stuff that they can get out at Aaron's house. Each program night that we do 6 programs per program. So out of that, we probably end up with close to 43 programs each fall, summer, and spring. We offer programs, I already went over that. So we also do trips, events, and special occasions. So we try to get our kids together for camps. We've had people come to the centers and do different activities. We had a guy who does drums from New York. He came in to do a drum lesson for the kids and just kind of help them work through that grief through like music and instruments. So we do a good job of just trying to cover our bases and give kids out in our programs the same opportunities that they would get out at Aaron's house. Okay, so what does the future look like? Well, I just got a new vehicle with some cool things that can help me to kind of bring more opportunities to the children. We have some new props that was given because of some great grants that we were able to get. And ultimately, we just want to grow our programs, and we need more volunteers. So we're working on garnering more volunteers and get more interns and more students from colleges to help us out. One of our bigger goals is one day we would possibly like to have an Aaron's house on the south side of the city. We think having a branch there so that families can be right there, I think that'd be a great idea. And we also have a teen center that we're working on right now. We just broke ground on it. That teen center will be up by November. It will give our teenagers the opportunity to have their own space. And any kid that comes into our program will be able to go out there to Aaron's house and be a part of those teen centers as well. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. And you will have an opportunity in a while to give your questions and comments to Eric regarding the wonderful program at Aaron's house. And now it's my honor to bring to you Reverend Angelo Mantee. Angelo is our native son, and he grew up here in Fort Wayne, right with the rest of us, and he is a graduate, actually, of Concordia High School. And Angelo ended up going to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Am I right? Okay. And there he went into seminary, and while he was there, he became very much involved in learning about the nonviolent social change information. He met people who were able to get him involved in that. He also developed his skill with working with youth by working for one of the United Methodist homes for children. Angelo brings to us 20 years of work in ministry already, still so young, and it amazes me that these young men have put in that kind of work and service already. So Angelo today is the executive director of the Alive Community Outreach, and he brings to us, to our community, work with the peacemakers, and he is doing a tremendous job of sharing all the things that we need to know about nonviolence and helping our young people to learn how to deal with their issues in a peaceful and productive manner. So join me now in welcoming Reverend Angelo Mantee.
Good morning, good afternoon, I guess. Let me pull this up. There we go. How's everybody doing? It is awesome to be here, and I just want to say, sometimes with things like this, you get folks that are part of a panel that are disconnected and each doing, whatever out in the community, but I just love the connection here. So Chief Ridley last year was part of our academy, joined us in the classroom, and joined us on one of the walking tours that we did, learning about the history of racism in Fort Wayne, learning about your experience at Central, and so she just brought so much to that. And then Eric, I met Eric when he was volunteering at Aaron's house. And so early on in our journey, we were taking kids to Aaron's house that didn't have transportation out there, many of them from the south end of town. And so that's how we met. And so we've been connected ever since. And he was he was a speaker in our very first academy in 2021, and it was a little bit smaller than it is now down in the basement over the City Life Center. And so just appreciate everything that he does. Eric is the real deal and has worked with my own family, kids in my family that have experienced loss, which I will talk about here in a minute. So this is my cousin, and I just want to name, so we have 60 kids right now in our academy down the street, and I just shared a little bit of my story with them this morning, and I've told this story hundreds of times, and I'm not a highly emotional person. I'm not a crier or anything like that, but I broke down this morning when I shared with them, and my energy is still kind of off from that. So I just wanted to name that. The pain is still very real, so yes, I just wanted to name that as I'm sharing this with you all, and I'm not going to go real deep into all the aspects of my story, but this happened in 2016 with my cousin. There's a bar on this street at the other end, Anthony and Mommy Sports and Spirits. It's no longer there. This was the incident that ended up shutting that bar down. So now there's just a field and a little memorial there for him and the two other young men that lost their lives. But this happened in 2016. We were in Georgia living our lives, my wife and I, and our 4 children at the time. And we were planning our roots there in Georgia. We loved it down there. But when this happened, we felt a call to come back home. I officiated his funeral down the street. And even then, when I was doing that, in the process of eulogizing my own cousin, my own flesh and blood, who had just been murdered, and seeing his children out in the funeral home, sitting down, and children that Eric has worked with, by the way, I knew it was time to come back. I didn't know what that meant, what that would look like, but I knew that it was time to come back home. And so that was in September 2016, and by June of the following year, we were here. And we didn't have a real plan, so I was working at a church for a while, just trying to figure things out, but really just spent that first couple of years, learning just what is going on, because we were already following what was happening in Fort Wayne, because 2016 ended up being a record year. Before my cousin got killed, we were paying attention from Georgia, like what is going on, what's happening in Fort Wayne. And so we were looking at data, and we're not going to dig deep into this data, but this was part of our learning. Okay, where are homicides happening? How many homicides are happening? As you see here, 2016 was a record year. Kind of went down. It's kind of been a roller coaster. Last couple of years have been down, and Eric had a graph on this. But looking at, okay, who is being killed? Who are the victims? So looking at age, you see kind of an average age hovering right around 30 years old. By sex, so looking at males and females, and males disproportionately are victimized. But this is an interesting trend, because whenever I'm looking at data, I'm looking at what are the trends, because in any given year, things can go this way, but when you step back and look at the big picture, what's happening, and look here from 2020 to 23. Isn't that interesting? So there's this steady decrease in the number of males who were victims, but a steady increase of women. Maybe that has something to do with COVID. There was a rise in domestic violence during that time, but just an interesting trend. So race. Pretty disturbing. Disproportionately black victims, although again, if you look at the last few years, things are evening out a little bit more. Same with the geographical area. Disproportionately, we're looking at the southeast quadrant. 46806 in particular. But those things are changing. Like if you look at 2021, that's the first year, and we have data that goes back before 2010, and this is what you see pretty much every year going back as far as we can, but then you get a little bit further on in 2021. So everybody in the Wayne TV comment section is one that talks about, well, of course it's in Southeast Fort Wayne or whatever, right? Okay, feel safe out northeast or wherever, because violence is on the rise, and it's spreading out into all communities. And so we learn a whole lot just looking at data, looking at what programs, who's doing what. This is around the time that Fort Wayne United had just got off the ground. Okay, what's the city doing? What's happening from a mental health standpoint? Just trying to learn and then filling in the gaps. And in the beginning, it was like, all right, we're meeting some families, and there are children and families that have expressed that they would go to Aaron's house, but they don't have transportation. And so that was one of the very first things we did. Well, let's get a van and take his to Aaron's house. But we ended up starting a support group, because there are all kinds of different grief support groups, resources in our city. But this is a different type of loss. And if you have lost somebody to violence, you know that this is a different type of loss. We all will experience grief if we live long enough. We're all going to lose people. but this is a different type of loss, to have somebody stolen from you, the dynamics of the criminal justice process, and the reality that a lot of people are out on the streets. One of the families right here, their son's killer is out on the streets, and they know, and they've been antagonized, and all this stuff that is just a different type of grief. And so we started with this group. But as we were doing this work, working with families, working with children, trying to kind of fill in some of those gaps, connect families with resources, we knew that that was an important part of the work. And it's a part of the work that we are still committed to right now. That last picture was taken in 2018. So that's when we started that support group. And this is just this past year. So back in September, so now we do a vigil every single September. So the National Day of Remembrance is September 25th. So around that time on a Saturday or Sunday, we do a vigil. This is the first year we did it at the church at First Wayne Street, United Methodist down the street where our offices are. The first 2 years we did it down at the MLK Bridge. But it's not a big long church service or anything like that, but we say some words, give some families opportunity to share, but we have a bell, and families can come up and ring the bell and say their loved one's name. And it's just a really powerful service. We have a full-time staff person committed to this work. Her name's Cynthia. We met her through our program back in 2018. Her own son was murdered on Easter Sunday morning on the way to meet her at church. And so she's become just such an important and powerful part of our program and what we do. So this is where we started, but the more that we were working with families, the more funerals that I was doing and officiating, the more I felt and our team felt compelled to add something to what we do that would ultimately, someday, hopefully, prayerfully, lead to there being less families needing support in the first place. What can we do that's preventative? What can we do to intervene? And so, as Chief Condra mentioned, that nonviolence and learning about nonviolent social change was a big part of my journey down in Georgia. I grew up in a pacifist religious tradition, and so that was always part of me. But what I learned down in Georgia is that pacifism it's only half of it, right? Just to not be violent, to not use violence is only one half of the equation. What are you going to proactively do? And that is the gift that Dr. King gave me in learning, how do you take a social injustice and organize and mobilize to change things, right? And so I started looking all over for nonviolence programs, what's happening, how are people utilizing this philosophy of nonviolence today, right? Not just referring to nonviolent protests and direct actions and that type of thing, but as a way of life, as a way of being and living in this world, and developing communities around that. And so I ended up going down to Selma, Alabama, and spending some time with Dr. Bernard Lafayette, who was one of Dr. King's. How many have heard of Dr. Lafayette before? Everybody should go home and read up on Dr. Lafayette. He's an amazing human. But he was with Dr. King on the last day of his life at the Lorraine Motel. And right before he walked out the door, because he had to go and catch a flight to Washington, D.C. And so he goes about to go out the door, and King stops him and says, "Bernard," he said, I've been thinking about something. The next phase of the movement that I really want to focus on is internationalizing and institutionalizing nonviolence. And so he ended up walking out the door, said, "Okay, boss, sounds good." Did not knowing that was the last words that he was going to hear from his mentor. And so he found out when he hit the ground in D.C. that he'd been killed. But he has taken that mantle as his final marching order. So he's developed nonviolence trainings and has done this work all over the world. And so I got to spend some time with him, but also see how this community in Selma was utilizing nonviolence to address injustices even today. How are we doing on time? What's that? Oh, okay. So we ended up getting connected to this larger Kingian, it's a hard word to say, so when I say Kingian nonviolence, is Dr. King's philosophy of nonviolence. There's a whole global network of folks who are doing this work in prisons and schools and all over in different contexts. And so we learned about this school in Chicago, North Lawndale College Prep, which is in an area of Chicago. There's a lot of gang violence. And they had the school, and it's a relatively small school. There's 600 some students. And they had like 10 police officers in the school. And these weren't intended to be community relations or school resource officer. They were there to police the kids. And it seemed like the more police that they were putting in the school, the more violence that was happening. So there was a principal that came in and he said, we got to do something different. And there was one of the teachers that was doing some nonviolence club work with a small group of kids. And he liked what he saw from that small group and said, how do we expand that and make that a part of the culture of the school? And so they did that. This is 15 years ago. And so they were able to reduce fights by 70% in the school by being proactive and having somebody in the school to focus on developing a culture of peace. And so we went to Chicago, learned from them, and ended up having this idea of an academy, because that is one of the things the folks that we went to in Chicago, that was central to what they did. They had this summer academy where they developed leaders. So we said, well, why not here? Why not try something like that here? And so first of all, we have to identify a school, which Southside was the easy school for us because we already have connections there. All of our own kids are in that system. We live next to the school. So we went to the principal and said, what do you think about this idea of recruiting some leaders? 10 students, 12 students who are ready and willing to step up to the plate and lead in a particular way. These are students that are already leading, already have some influence, but to lead in a way where they would be focused on building peace and addressing issues of violence and injustice in their school and beyond. And we teach them Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence and steps for organizing a peaceful campaign. We talk about de-escalation, talk about one of the principles of nonviolence is actually to avoid internal violence of the spirit, not just external physical violence. That violence that we all carry with us at some level, trauma, all of that. Kind of work through this process, but ultimately have them identify some issues in their school that they want to address, some things that they want to see change, and then with them, along with the principal and the administration and staff, we would help them develop some actual plans, some concrete plans to address those issues that they identified. And then we would walk along with them to help them do that. And so 2021 was the first year that we did that. And eventually we started a peace club in the school. That's one of the things that that first group wanted to do. Those core students in our summer academy, those are our leaders, but they wanted to create a space that was open to anybody who wanted to be a part of this movement. So that gave birth to the Peace Club. The Peace Club has given birth to all kinds of things. This is a memorial wall that's in the student commons representing youth gun violence victims. If you go in there now, right now in the student commons, those are flags. We have 60 plus large flags that each flag representing a student or group of students that that go to school there, just to celebrate the diversity that we have. Peace Week is something that we do. We raise awareness about different types of violence that week. And so just a number of things that have happened. So this is one of the cool things. Have any of y'all heard about the Peace Grannies or Grandpies? The Peace Grannies and Grandpies. So this is a group of retirees that come into the school and come during lunch and hang out with the kids and talk with them. And they've bought them donuts on all the juniors' donuts on SAT testing day, and I've just developed some real deep bonds and relationships with the students. So if you want to be a peace granny or grampy or uncle or auntie, let me know. It's been a pretty cool thing. So I just want to show you a little bit of the impact here. And this is not quite the end of the year numbers, but this is about a couple weeks before the end of the year. But you can see what we're looking at. Every year there's been just a steady progress with this. So last year, the days of peace are the number of days without a fight. So we tracked that consecutively and cumulatively. So last year, our longest stretch was 14. This year was 22. So you can see we had 2 20-day stretches this year. Last year, 0. The number of 10-day stretches, we had 7 this year, 3 last year, and then cumulatively 137 out of 166 compared to 125 out of 166. And this is not just we're not just trying to stop fights from happening. We're trying to create the condition, create the environments that lead to there being less fights. You understand? So that's what it's all about for us, and empowering the students to lead that effort. That has been the key part of all of this. And so Heather mentioned her neighbor who did not approve, voted no for safer schools, which that's all right. Hopefully we'll win her over at some point. So the referendum allowed what we were doing at Southside since 2021 to now expand into all of the schools. And so these pictures, I just took these 2 days ago. So all these kids right now are walking down by the old fort somewhere doing a walking tour. But we have an average of 12 students per school, a full-time peace advocate working in each school going into next year. And so I am just very humbled and amazed at where we're at, and this vision that we had initially was so small, right? And now it's like not even my or our vision. We're just part of the ride because the students, they responded in ways that we didn't expect. Just how ready and willing that they were. We talk about youth being the future. They're the present. They're the right now, and they are showing us that every single day. And so I do have a few-minute video if we have time for that. Do we? So this is the last thing that I'll show. So this is the recap from last year's Academy. And in a couple weeks, hopefully, someone will have time to edit a recap of this year's Academy. This is something specific that, like, I don't know, like, where I live, where I come from, this is very, like, needed. You know, like, this is information that we need to learn, that we need to be teaching.
What I've learned that it's okay to accept the pain, you know. You don't have to hold it in. A lot of people have done me so wrong, and I really didn't even deserve it. And for the longest, I've been blaming that person, but I've also been blaming myself. I'm been blaming myself because I've been thinking I'm not capable of fixing something. I'm not capable of being worthy for something that really shouldn't even happen to me. And so realizing, going through this whole progress, this whole program, it's like, okay, it's not my fault, but it's also not theirs because it's taught. It's put into the environment constantly, it's something that's constantly exposed because history repeats itself.
Hey.
I've grown with realizing just the whole concept of trauma. A lot of my trauma comes from when I was younger and I've just grown up with it. So I've never really seen it as big of an issue as somebody else, but trauma isn't on a bigger, small scale. Everyone has trauma. It's different for everybody, and it still impacts us. So having to open up and break down about it, I really realized how much it's affecting me and how much it's something I definitely need to work through. As I continue to grow and want to help others, I also know that it's important to heal my inner peace before I'm able to go in the world and heal other people, because you have to take care of yourself first.
Peacemakers in every school is a dream. It's just like something I want. I want them in every school across the country, across the globe. I think Peacemakers are like just a great program.
Nice, crazy Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Can we just give it up to our group of Democrats? So thankful for everyone to be a part of this. We're going to open it up to questions, answers. I have a mic. If you don't mind, I would like to maybe ask a question first. I'm curious. I consider myself to be a person who stands in the middle and mediates. Any thoughts, words you could share with the adults in the community about, like, because oftentimes we don't remember what it means to be a child. I was just talking to someone the other day. Our childhood was like, you don't pay the bills, you don't have any problems, right? So can you just give the adults in the community a reminder of maybe just something to keep in mind as we are engaging the younger generations? And then let's just admit that this younger generation is different and special, and it's new to us. So any thoughts for us as the people with the bricks and the dollars for the young community?
Would you like me to answer?
I'll take something
for it.
from all of you.
Yeah, all right. I just think it's really important to realize that our children are really trying their best. Even when you see them, you know, in some situations that, you know, you would look back and say, I'd never do that. You still have to realize that they are trying and they are giving it their best, and these roadblocks like trauma and violence and all these things are just really compressing those efforts. And with the support of so many adults who invest their time and their resources towards helping those children achieve those goals, I just think that we really need to focus on that and just remember that our children, they were born to try. They were born to make it, to be successful. The things that we have put in place, the environments that we have created as a society is stopping that. So keep that in mind.
I'd like to just say for all of us, we need to be more empathetic toward our young people. I think for my being almost, 7 decades old, for me growing up, I feel like our parents tried to guard our innocence. They tried to protect us from a lot of things. Unfortunately, today, I think our children are overexposed. They get too much information, and oftentimes too early. They're not prepared to deal with a lot of the issues that they have to learn about, and sometimes through no fault of their own. They fall into some of this information and don't even know how to handle it or process it, and don't have methods. So I think we need to really work towards trying to be more sensitive to them, open our ears and our hearts more, and just, I don't think I could navigate being a young person in this time. This is a whole different animal, and it's out of control, I think. So we just need to, I think, listen to our young people and just try to be there for them, and listen, be there, just be there.
So you said something, we were on the phone last night, and you said something that really resonated with me and what this experience has been for me. Something to the effect of the youth teach you as much as you teach them. And I think that so much of what we do when it comes to youth, we enter into that with an attitude of we know what you need. We have the answers. We're here to mentor you, to teach you. But that's been my experience, not just in the academy, but as a father and other youth work. I mean, kid, if we have that, if we're humble enough to learn and recognize that our young people do have as much to teach us as we have to teach them. It's different, right? There's wisdom and experience and all of that we have, but the world is changing, right? And they can teach us about their world. And so I think that's first and foremost for me, but also I think in terms of vulnerability, one of the most powerful things that we do, and every single year we do all these cool things. The mayor's coming to visit tomorrow, and we do field trips and all this. Every year the students say that our circle times that's what they report being the most powerful experience for them. And
have your attention. I'm a retired conflict mediator trained by Fort Wayne Community Schools, who taught a scientific-based program to reduce violence in the school. So I'm in.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
I love that job. Stopped a lot of tension in the school building.
Awesome.
I'll explain that, how I did it when I come back.
All right.
Part of it was social norms marketing.
Yeah, we will have you. Thank you. But yeah, but creating the space where for students to be open and to share, and also for us to allow ourselves as adults to be vulnerable in that space as well, rather than going in with this power dynamic that we're going to create a space for you to share, but we're still going to, we're not going to be vulnerable. And it just this morning, students shared things they said they never shared before in their lives, and maybe me being emotional or some of the other advocates being emotional, and not being afraid to show that. Created more of a space of openness and for them to share. So I think we just got to break it down. We're all on this journey together, no matter how old we are, right? And we all have a lot to teach and learn from each other.
Hello? Beautiful. Thank you all. We have an online question. I'll just read it. Reverend Angelo, you mentioned that Southside High School went 137 days out of 166 without fights this year. Do you have any data for when you first started the program?
Yes, but not on me. But there's been a decrease every year. So but yeah, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head. But and from the first year, the 2021, I don't think we have the number. We started tracking that in the 22-23 school year.
To that person online, I would also invite you to the website or the academy to check it out if you're interested. Do we have any questions, comments from the audience? Anyone?
Thank you both again for sharing powerful stuff. Thank you, Angela, for being vulnerable up there with us as well. I just wanted to ask, because I know both of you kind of mentioned volunteer opportunities. Is there trainings that come with that volunteer opportunities? Both you and Eric.
Okay. You want to go first?
You can go ahead.
All right, cool. Yeah, we have close to 20 hours of training that each one of our volunteers take on in order to become officially able to facilitate our programs. But we do have other volunteer opportunities as well. As far as the outreach programs go, we kind of slice those hours in half because the need is there, but we encourage them to go back later and maybe pick up on the rest of the training. And we also have opportunities at Aaron's house to help as far as like being home servers, where you pass out food and kind of get to know the families that are there. And then we have our camp volunteer opportunities. So it's just a number of ways to be involved and invested in the grief community.
Yeah, we're early on in this process, so we're still figuring out what some of that looks like. But one thing that we do is so the whole Peace Granny and Grampy thing, how that started was we were doing a Bible study at our church, a 4-week study on gun violence. And out of that, they asked what they could do. It was mainly like 10 or 12, mainly retirees, what they could do to, in addition to just doing a study. So then we started going to schools, and then we said, well, do y'all want to learn more about nonviolence? Do maybe a 6-week discussion on the principles of nonviolence. That turned into an ongoing learning community. So we met at first every week. So now we meet every other week. So on Tuesdays at Turner Chapel, AME up the street here, we meet. That's that space for us. It's a learning community. So it's not like a come for this 1 hour of training to do this, but it's an ongoing learning community of people that are living life. Because what we're really trying to do is not a program, but to be a part of a movement of people that are living out this life as peacemakers and living out this life of nonviolence. So that's the closest thing that we have to that right now. But going into next year, we're having conversations about doing specific trainings, like kind of for anybody interested to come and be a part of this work. But we're figuring out what some of those condensed trainings would look like going into next year.
Another question?
I noticed you were talking about the children and their responsibilities as far as the fighting and so forth. What is the responsibility of the parents to teach their children to go to school and not make an idiot out of themselves by fighting? And the other thing is, I noticed on the graphic you had in the black community, it was way up in the black community. Shouldn't somebody be able to answer the question why? Why is this so forth? I think the parents owe this to their children in the community, to the powers that be, to answer this problem. Why is it that the south side of Fort Wayne is the graphic? They're leading every negative category. Is it in the home?
What do you think?
I think it's in the home.
So why is it in the home in the black community, but not over by Homestead?
Well, because I think we've put ourselves in a position to where it's material things. And in the white community, we give and we throw money at the kids and go on about our business. In the black community, there is no money to be thrown to the kids. There's nothing other than get it yourself. I grew up on the rough side of town, Fort Wayne, and I had to paper out and so forth, and there wasn't no robbing, as kids like gangs in then. But the people in Fort Wayne, the powers that be in Fort Wayne, they were in denial that there were gangs. And we should have faced it. And in the homes, we should tell the truth. And when we catch a person lying, we should call them out, because those people owe it to our children to be transparent and truthful.
I'm going to take this.
Please.
Okay. I hesitate to ascribe and assign cultural characteristics to any group, especially when you can see these characteristics in all communities.
Yes.
I also think that assigning responsibility to a house or a home kind of just scoots right on past systemic powers that be. And for racial minorities, so much of our experience, we're born into a society where so many structures impact our existence. And they impact our parents' existence, and they impact our grandparents' existence. So we're born into a system and a situation that's beyond our control. And to assign negative responsibility, to ascribe it as a cultural kind of reasoning, it is a disservice, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that perspective, that the reason why the graph is higher in the Black community is intrinsic within Black culture. It's not intrinsic within Black cultures. There are a lot of things we could point out to. We could say that that graph specifically talks about gun violence. But what that graph doesn't talk about are other types of violence that are overrepresented in other. Gun violence is a very, 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 very specific occurrence, but it's only one type of violence. So the idea that for Black people, we're assuming that they're violent because violence happens is just not progressive. It's not based in necessarily truth.
What I was referring to as far as teaching children in the home, you take a negative and you make positive. And you take that negative and you turn it into an energy force to prove everything wrong. If they say in our community, there's more blacks, children, and robbers and so forth, then the community as a whole should come together and say, hey, this is not right. Let's get these
I-
things in order so our kids will be able to see that this is a lie. And
I think what is being overlooked in that is that, like, when Eric was talking about trauma grief and how it's compacting, we can't just tell children, like, okay, get up and go, and don't, we have to work them through that and work them up to a place. And it's not immediate returns. But I'm going to let Eric go ahead, and Eric had something to say.
I was just saying, actually, you are one of the sharpest people I know. But because you hit on so many great points. And I just wanted to go back to what you were asking. How do we stop some of these social issues and these diseases that are ingrained in different cultures in our society? Different cultures, because every culture has their problems, not just us. Just the impact of programs and services that enrich communities is important, right? I mean, all adults don't understand grief or Kingian nonviolence, right? But through programs like these that are willing to step out into these communities and not sit on the sidelines and reply in comment boxes and sections under 21 Alive News, every homicide, we're able to actually enrich communities and educate those adults who have not ever heard of the trauma and the behaviors that are associated with unpronounced grief. So I just wanted to point that out. I think you had some great points, but let's not forget that there is something happening all the time. And when people like you come in and help and support these programs, like join the Grannies and Granddads programs for Kingian, for the Alive group, that's only going to add to the health and the enrichment of that community. So thank you. All right.
I just want to say one thing. I think, I really appreciate that you guys are allowing for children, but like children to be human beings at the base level, but also to express themselves and give them space for emotion. I don't think
Start over. I'm just joking.
I will, okay. Woo. Okay, I'll start over. I want to first say thank you. All three of you are giving children the ability to express themselves, giving them the space to express themselves. My own experience, I can only speak for myself, as an African-American female, is growing up, I wasn't given the space to express myself, right? It was like children are to be seen and not heard. And so that was a familial thing. I don't know if that's a naturally cultural thing. Some people, yeah, some people, no. However, I think just working with children as I have throughout my life and speaking with them, a lot of the times they're not given the grace
that they're mature enough to express themselves and speak for themselves, regardless if that's grief or peace or if that's storytelling. So I appreciate that. And then my question would be, as we are raising our children, how do you help them express themselves and articulate themselves to adults, right? Sometimes I think as adults we have our minds closed off. How do you help them transcend that?
Well, I think that Angelo brought up a very good point of being vulnerable, right? I struggle with that myself. I just had an issue with my own son last night, right? And I work with children, and I never have issues with them, no matter what their behaviors are. But my feelings are not vulnerable sometimes even when I speak to my own children, right? And that's kind of a wild thing to, kind of look at. So I think that just practicing that vulnerability and being open to sharing the true feelings that are behind those first feelings, because that's what I talk to a lot of our kids about in our programs is anger is just the front of it, right? But behind it is fear, right? It's being scared. It's being it's you forecasting what you see in your own self into your own children and not allowing them to be innocent as they are. So I just think that we need to kind of focus on ourselves, and our children automatically improve. They look at our examples and they follow through with that. So that's what I think.
So my question is, for people who don't necessarily have the platforms or the organizations to affect change to that capacity, how can we carry this forth in our own lives and for the children that we touch?
One of the things I love about nonviolence in the Kingian tradition is that it's a way of life. So it's not just something that you turn on and turn off. So it is a way of life that you are living it out in your everyday life. And so I think kind of similar to what you were saying, like if you are committing yourself to that way of life, to being a difference maker, a change maker, a peacemaker, it's going to happen in official capacities. If you get involved with a group like ours or with somebody else, but it's going to happen when you go to the grocery store. It's going to happen in your family, the way that you engage. And so I think really committing as individuals to being about that, it's going to have ripple effects that you may or may not expect to happen. But get involved. Like if there's something compelling and you don't have that platform, jump in and get, because there's no shortage of ways to get involved that align with your unique passions and gifts and graces.
Mm-hmm. And I also think the knowledge is there, right? I don't think he charges for Kingian philosophy yet, right? And we don't for grief support work. We have an open door, right? People come through all the time and they want to know about grief. They want to learn about how do they combat this huge problem. They can see those behaviors. So, just being an ambassador is important. You don't have to actually do the things that we do, but the knowledge is there if you want to engage and be a part of it. Nobody said that, you were going to get arrested if you don't wear an Aaron's House shirt and you talk to somebody about grief, right? You're fine. If you want the knowledge, it's there. We're more than willing to share on both parts, because at the end of the day, I really believe at the bottom core that we do this because we just love to help. I would do this for free. That's why I enjoy what I do. I would do this 100% free.
You did do it for free.
I did.
I met you.
Yeah. and if things didn't work out, I'd do it for free right now. I just think it's so vital, because it has so many different angles to it. I can educate on one end. I can facilitate on the other end. I can hang out and play kickball like I did yesterday at McMillan with like 40 kids, and we had a blast. I almost broke my legs, right? I got all these different ways where I can help people, and it feels organic. So I'm always available. Our centers are always available. The knowledge is there. And you guys have came here today, and this is really cool to see this amount of people here willing to learn about these programs and be ambassadors even if you don't know it. So thank you.
I just want to say finally, we just need to put ourselves where the children are. You don't have to have anything really so special. And you know, we're each special anyway. Everybody brings their own beauty and their own intelligence and all these different gifts that you bring. If you come and just put those before the children and just be there, just be a presence. You don't have to, oftentimes don't have to do a whole lot of anything except be there. They'll see you, you know, they'll be interested in you. And, you know, you develop, we need these relationships to help these children to grow. The more asset builders children have, the better people they become. So we can each do that.
I would just also say snacks.
Definitely snacks.
Snacks help.
They definitely help.
All right, so we're a little behind, so I'm going to rush through these last few. So the YWCA and the Fort Wayne Cinema Center invites you. We're holding a series, Allyship and Film Series. The next one will be held Saturday, June 29th at the Fort Wayne Cinema Center. We'll be sharing a PBS documentary called Two American Families. There'll be a screening and a Q&A with facilitated by a guest who will be announced shortly. And the Q&A will discuss poverty and allyship. I find that films are a great place and an opportunity to have conversations. So I invite you all to put that on your calendar, come out and share with us. If you are interested in staying in contact with the YWCA, you can use this QR scan to get monthly emails containing our Are You an Ally blog post written by yours truly. I encourage you to check it out and give me any feedback. Upcoming events and YWCA Northeast Indiana's racial justice updates. You also have the opportunity to schedule racial justice training. We have a Diversity 101 training for businesses, and then we also have an extended care cultivating allyship and racial equity series of workshops. To find out more information, you can use that QR code or visit the website. And if it's something your organization is interested in doing, by all means, reach out and we can have that discussion. We are also encouraging you to save the date for our upcoming diversity dialogues. The next one will be August 22nd, Nurturing the People. That young fellow who yelled out earlier, he will be our guest, Mr. Ephraim Smiley. And so we're going to talk to some of the people, the individuals and groups who are leading some of the food gaps in the South Side. We're going to talk to you about some of like the local farmer communities and culture. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And as always, the YWCA encourages you to donate to support our work. We are currently moving to our new facility, and so any extra help in that capacity would be greatly appreciated. As it says there, every dollar matters, so please share some. And lastly, I want to say thank you again to our guest speakers. Chandra, it is a personal goal of mine. I'm so thankful that you allowed me to share you with everyone. That was personal. And then Eric and Angelo, thank you so much. Your work will have a ripple effect in our city, and I'm so excited to make sure that everyone knows your name and what you do. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. Please fill out the forms.
Thank you, Heather. Nice. That's awesome. You got it.
I met you a few weeks ago at Turner.
Did it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Robin. So I'm a retired teacher. And so